Hi, Shannon here from houseimprovements.com. I'm going to show you how to do some work on your electrical panel. We're going to first hook up a 120 volt breaker and then a 240 volt breaker. We've already got the wires pre-ran right to the box, so that's already done. So it's just a matter of showing you how to hook it up into the box. So to begin with, we've got the main cover already off the box. There would have been a cover on here with a door held on with a few little bolts. We've removed those, got it all open already so you can see. So you can see right now the main guts of your panel. You've got all your breakers here right now for the different circuits in the home. Over on this end, you have the main breaker. This shuts the power off to the house. It doesn't make the panel completely dead. Under this panel, there'll be some lugs that even if this breaker is shut off, there's lugs under here, the main service coming into the house, that is still live and deadly. Okay, so there's no reason to remove this panel. You shouldn't be in there doing anything without an electrician doing it. Okay, so just to remember, once this is off, all of these breakers, this area is dead, but from this way, that direction, everything's still live. Now, this box is hung horizontally. A lot of times you're probably more familiar with the box hanging vertically. This one just happens to be horizontal because of the space restrictions. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start with the installation of the breakers. One thing you really need to do if you're not comfortable at all with this, you need to be hiring a certified electrician. This is dangerous. This is life-threatening if you don't do it correctly. Okay, so I just want to be clear on that. We're just showing it as a demonstration, so it will give you an idea what the electrician would be doing if or when you have to have them come and do a similar situation in your home. So like I said, we've got the cover off. First thing I'm going to do is kill the power, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to have done this before I even removed the cover. So I'm going to kill the main power to the home. We've got our filming lighting plugged in actually next door so that we've got power for the lights down here. So we've killed the power. Now everything basically from here in this panel, everything from here over is non-electrified, so we're good. Okay, and we've left the safety cover on the service end, so that is basically covered up and safe as well right now at this point for us. So if you look, you can see we've got a multitude of wires already coming in from down here, up there I mean, and they're all entering the box. They've all got a clamp on them which secures them to the box so they can't be pulled out mistakenly. They're all stapled and secured within 12 inches or less of the box. Up top you can see right here, all across there. So everything looks good. Probably the only questionable thing is they don't like to see two wires under some of these staples. You can see there's actually two wires. They liked it to be individual wiring in most areas, so that's the only bit of a issue here that I can see. Over to this end is where we've got our circuits coming in that we're dealing with. This one here is our 120 volt circuit. This is actually running up to a couple of plug-ins that were added into the house. So that's this one here, this white one. If you look over here to the right, you'll see a yellow colored one. This one is for a 240 volt heating system. So this is running to one heater up in the front entry of this home. And it's yellow, it's kind of designated that way. A lot of times that would be orange, but in this case it is yellow. So that's coming down there. What we're going to deal with first, maybe we'll do this 240 volt circuit just because it's a little bit shorter. So you bring your wire into the box. You want to leave yourself a good couple of feet, maybe even 3 feet to start with, so that you don't end up running short. These ones are actually going to be a little bit short, but they'll just reach by the look of it. Now with a 240 volt circuit, in this case it's run by a 12 gauge 2-wire circuit, and in the end both of these wires are going to end up being hot. So these are both going to go to the breaker, where in a standard 120 volt, one would go to the neutral bar, which I'll show you when I do it, and one would go to the breaker. But in this case, these are both going to be hot. So these will both go on the breaker. At the other end of this wire, where the heater is, the white wire should get a wrap of black tape on it. you know, just below the stripped area. This is just indicating for anybody down the road that comes to it that those are both hot wires, so somebody doesn't accidentally hook it up wrong. Okay, so we've got those two wires, and we've got a ground wire. You should always have a ground wire. So I'm going to start out by installing the ground wire, and it's going to be a little difficult to see probably, but in this panel, right down here on the bottom, there's a grounding bar. Now this bar is just bolted directly to the box. You'll see other ground wires, which are the bare copper wire, running to it. So we're just going to take a screwdriver. In that bar there's some screw lugs, and there's actually one loosened out there right now. This wire's a little wore on the end, so I'm just going to give myself a bit of a kink in it, like that, so that when I get it over to where it goes, I can just simply drop it straight down into the mounting hole, like so, and I'm going to tighten the screw up. Make sure the screw is tight, good and snug. That's grounding your circuit right there on that one circuit. Okay, so now that just leaves us with the two main wires here. We have got our 240 volt breaker. This one is a 15 amp, and you're going to find, depending on your brand of breaker box, the breakers are obviously going to be a little different. They may be slightly different on the way that they plug into the bars on the box and so on. So you need to make sure you got the right breaker to start with. This one here, this is a square D style, is the style they call it, but you're going to find that this is the way the breaker goes in the box because we're horizontal. If this one was vertical, the breakers would be like that in the box. So you're going to find basically you've got your bar here for turning it on and off, right? So we want to turn it into the off position. Directly below that you should find, in this case, there's going to be two screws with clamping type lugs underneath them. That's where these wires are going to go. So if you look in here, you can see how when I tighten that screw down, those two kind of flatter surfaces are going to clamp together and clamp right on the wire once it's injected into there. So it doesn't really matter which wire goes on which side, it's just that you have one on each side. So I'm going to insert the white wire. And again, I don't know if you can see that well, but it goes simply between those two bars. There's a little bit of an indentation there, so it should fit there. I'm going to tighten up the screw. Make sure it's seated fully into there. Usually what you would do is strip off about 3/4 of an inch of the outside sheeting off of there, and that should give you enough bare copper. We're going to stick the next one in all the way, and it kind of bottoms out once you get in there far enough. It won't go any further. And again, you want these nice and snug. Okay, so I've got those in there, and you can see how it goes right in there and underneath the clamp. Actually, that one clamp's a little crooked. There we go. Okay, so we've got it in there. Now, something I will show you as well is a circuit tester that I have that just simply confirms that you have no power. Now, we already know that we turned the main breaker off, but if you have one of these line testers, they just simply test for voltage. They're not super accurate, but they're a good quick test. And so all I'm going to do is I want to just touch these wires, just be sure I'm not getting any buzzing. If it was live, this would be buzzing right away, and I'll maybe show you that once I turn the circuit back on. So we've confirmed there is no electrical power there. I should have done that before I started messing around in there, but I just thought of it. So we've got our breaker all wired up. This is our 240 breaker. This is the location I'm going to be putting it into. And this style of breaker, I need to basically push the top end in first, and it'll snap into those silver bars that you see in there to the load center. And then there's one clip on the bottom that snaps onto this bar, just basically holding it into place. Okay, so route your wires around out to the outside so they're out of the way. You know, down the road you're always going to probably be adding more circuits or whatever, so you want to have things as nice and neat as you can. So basically get it inside there. I want to get the top in first, if I can, like so, and it just clips in there nice and tight. And you can notice I still have the breaker off. Okay, we've got the main power off as well. I'm just kind of laying these wires around there nice and neat so they're not interfering with anything else. You know, this is all room here where more breakers could go, so you want to allow lots of room and lots of wire on your line to maneuver around in there. So that's the 240 breaker, and again that was for a heat line, for electric heat. So now we'll go over to the 110 volt or 120 volt breaker. This one, there's a little bit more wire left on there, so we've got more freedom to go. When you've got a big box like this, you know, it's actually not a bad idea to have some extra wire, because you can always fold it up and tuck it back in the side. Down the road, somebody may have to change this box and they're going to wish you had a little extra wire to, you know, get around to where they have to go in the new center. But so I always try to leave a little bit if I can. That first line was a little short really, but this one's got plenty on it. So very similar situation, other than okay, so ground, really simple, just hooks up just like we did the other one, so that's not an issue. I'm just going to swing it out of the way. We have a black and a white again. This is a 14-2 wire, so this is 14 gauge, and we've got a black hot wire and a white neutral wire. So in this case, on the 120 volt, we're only going to get one wire hooked to the breaker. This is the breaker here. This is a 15 amp single pole breaker. So you can see we only have one screw on the bottom, one hot wire. Okay, the white wire, I'm going to show you where it goes. There's another set of bars on there that it hooks up to. First thing I'm going to do is just cut these off and re-strip them. Okay, so I've stripped that off. This is 14 gauge wire. If you look on your strippers, these ones just strip 12 and 14 gauge, so there's going to be a hole there and a 14 beside it, so that's the one we want. So we just simply move it down about 3/4 of an inch or 5/8 of an inch, squeeze and pull, and that just pulls the outer shield off. We'll do that on both here. So that should expose enough copper that you need to do this. So I'm going to hook up the ground wire just like we did the first time. Again, I do have the electrical off. And again, if you're not comfortable with this, because this is a deadly situation, you know, make sure you get an electrician, someone who's more qualified if you're not comfortable with it. So you can see I've just kind of taken the extra wire as I figured out how far I've got to go. And I pushed it around to the side. I'm going to get this over into the grounding area. Now on the ground bar, if you run out of lugs to put it behind, you can double them up. Just got to get it back in there. Some areas you can get a homeowner's permit if you are comfortable with doing this. You can actually get an electrical permit that homeowners can do their own stuff. If you're having an electrician come in, he's going to pull a permit to actually do this, so that the electrical company knows what's being done, and they may come in and inspect it afterwards. Good idea, because there's, you know, nothing wrong with having somebody come in and inspect it. And usually a permit for something like this is pretty minimal. You know, it might be 20 bucks or whatever, so just depending on your area. So now the next one I'm going to take is this neutral wire, the white wire, and we're actually going all the way over. It's kind of similar to where the ground was, but you'll notice it's not really attached right directly to the box. These terminals here are all for the white wires, and they are connected behind here to the neutral side of the power source coming in. So again, we're just going to route the wires around the outside. I've got a little bit of extra here, so I can make a bit of a fold back in that corner, get that extra out of my way. I'm just going to simply lay it along the bottom inside here. And I want to come up into one of these white lugs here. So I'm going to find one that's empty. There's one right there. I'm going to stick my wire right up in there, tighten this lug up. Oops, that's the wrong screwdriver. Right here. Okay, so I snug that up, give it a little tug. You can see it's not going to come out of there. So we've got the neutral all hooked up. Now we take our breaker, and just like we did on the 240 volt, it's very similar. It's got the exact same type of hookup in the bottom. I'm going to maybe have to loosen that off a little bit. I'm going to stick that copper end of the black wire in between those two plates. Tighten it up. Nice and snug, just like that. So that's all in there. Same thing with this style of panel. I've got to snap in the top unit onto the metal bar, and then the bottom corner afterwards to just hold it in place. And again, I've got some excess. You wouldn't have to necessarily have this much. I've got the room in the panel, so I'm going to leave that much in here. But it's always nice to have 6 inches or so extra of wire there. Okay, so I've got it. I'm just going to insert it right onto the bar there, just like so. Okay, so we've got it in, and you can notice I've got it turned to the off position as well. So we've got both of those put in there. Just double check that our wire's all laying nice, nothing's, getting too tangled up or anything. And everything's back of this lip that's on the panel, because we do have to put the face on, so we don't want to wire in between, like in front of here, because it'll get pinched. So just making sure everything's tucked back out of the way and it looks good. We'd be ready to put on our main cover and then turn on the main breaker. So now something you're going to have to do on the main cover, if I can get this big one up here. So here's the little door. This is where all these breakers that you see in there are going to stick through. And on the panels there's going to be these little covers on those areas that would block off the sections that didn't have breakers in before. Now the double one for the 240 is over here somewhere. It's already removed, but I need to take one out for that single one. And these are just kind of just barely on there, so if you take a pair of pliers and wiggle them a bit, that piece comes out, and that allows the face of the breaker to protrude through. So what we're going to do, actually I'm going to show you that circuit tester here before I put this cover on, which means I'm going to turn on the main power. So I'm just keeping my fingers back. I'm going to switch the main power on. Okay, we've got power now to the house, and everything over this way is powered up. So we want to be careful. I'm just going to show you how this works. So turn it on. Now when I contact it to a wire that has power, you can hear how it beeps like that. So all of these are all got power, right? Just like so. Oh, that one I've got turned off. That's one of our ones we did. So that one's good. Now here's our one that we had turned off before. I can turn it on. We've got power there. Okay, so that's how that works. It's, like I said, they can be a little finicky. They aren't 100% certain, but it is a little bit of an easy way to double check. So I'll turn that off. I'm going to turn this back off, the main power, and I want to put my front panel on. So this one is mounted just like so. I'm going to flip this down, because sometimes when you're going to put this on, you need to wiggle the breakers around a bit just to get them to fit around the opening in the box there. Actually, this one all went on pretty good there. So you can see how now those openings are all filled up with breakers. You don't want to have a space, say you took a breaker out because you deleted something or whatever, and that leaves an actual opening here. If you took this breaker back out, there are plastic covers you can get that snap into that opening just so it's covered up, so nobody can accidentally stick a screwdriver in there or anything and get electrocuted. So always a good idea, if you've removed some breakers, get the little cover Put it in there. Don't just tape it up, get the right cover and do it right, or somebody could get hurt. Okay, so I've got the top 3 screws in there, so the cover's kind of hanging while I get the rest all attached quickly, and then we'll turn the main power on, and then there's one final step to do after that. We're just snugging everything up. You don't want to leave this cover off if you're not, you know, as soon as you're done, cover it back up so nobody gets messing around here or your kids get hurt or something. Even if you know, you couldn't quite get the project done and you got to go to work for the rest of the day and come back and work on it tonight or something, just throw the cover on quick. That way there's no problems. Okay, so that's our door there. Now you can see pretty much all boxes come with a sticker, and it's got some spaces on here. The numbers correspond to the numbers that are on the metal underneath the breaker, so that you know what every one of those breakers turns on or off. Legally, you're supposed to have everything marked out so that if you have a problem anywhere in the house, something's shorting out, you can run down here, read over, okay, number 10, that's my plugs for the fridge or whatever. Okay, turn it off, so it's a safety feature. You're not clicking random breakers until you find the right one. So you should have it labeled. The problem with these stickers is they give you very little space to actually write anything. There's not very many breakers where it's just going to say fridge plug. You know, there would be one example where you could probably fit it in here because the fridge should be on its own circuit. You know, there's going to be times where you might have hallway lights and spare bedroom plugs. You can't get that all written in there. There's just not enough space. So over on this side, I can see they've got a paper taped on here or attached, and they've actually got the breaker numbers, and then it's I guess it's printed off or written in, some of it, as to what's what. So that's good. At least they've got some kind of list there so that you can easily identify what is what. So now what we would need to do is we added this breaker number 22. It isn't on the list anywhere already, so we would want to add it right on here. In this case, this was office plugins, so we would fill that out right there so that the people know what is what. This other one, being that electric heat, it was actually already on here. That's number 12 and 14. And actually it isn't on this list, but it's filled out over here, so they at least have it marked out. So okay, so you want to make sure you've got that filled out. We're going to turn the main breaker back on. So that's right there. The house is juiced up now. We can turn on the 2 breakers that we did. This one was on, so now everything's on. They've got something off here, in floor heat pump, so they've got the heat turned off there. But anyways, everything else is on, and we're complete. So that's the basics on installing a circuit breaker for 240 and for 120 volt. Like I said before, I can't caution enough that you need to be careful, and if you're not comfortable, hire an electrician to do this sort of thing. The consequences can be definitely deadly. So hopefully you like this. Hopefully you found it helpful, and if you want, you can go to our website. There's some articles there on other do-it-yourself type projects. We've also got the link back to these videos, which you'll find on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And we've also got the forum there. So if you have any questions or even comments, you can go to the forum, post them up, and I'll get back to you usually fairly quickly. So thanks a lot.